Have you ever looked at your life and thought, I could do better than this? Do you ever feel like something big is missing in your life? Do you long for happiness and never seem to find it? Has life left you broken or lost? Do you ever feel out of control? Have you ever tried things to help you feel better and been, disappointed? Are you ready for your life to change? Then stay tuned. This is The Difference.
You are listening to The Difference, a presentation of The Hour, a media platform that's been around for well more than 50 years. First on radio, then on television, streaming on the Hour Stream platform found at thehour.org, and now all the way back to audio again with a podcast, which is great because, Steve, you and I have faces for radio, so we couldn't be happier to be going back to audio. So now I'm Anthony Thaxton, and this is your host, my friend, my brother, Steve Castillo.
Thanks, Anthony. I feel the spirit of Keith Tonkel with this. He would be so proud.
Grace and peace,
that
friends.
We have gone back to audio.
He loved radio.
He loved some radio. He tried to convince us again and again, and probably wisely, that we could go back to radio. You know, I'm excited about this. We're sitting here with this headset on and microphones. There's no camera, and so we don't have to worry about
we don't have to smile
the
and all that stuff.
aesthetics of it.
Yes.
Exactly. So, but we have talked about this whole issue of the difference for a long time. And with video, we're going to do some storytelling. But we just thought, what a great format. I listen to podcasts all the time.
Yeah.
And we share those back and forth.
Right.
And now, whether somebody's driving in the car or at the gym, it's something
at
to...
the where? The gym.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
I've heard of it, yeah.
It's theoretical.
There are some
I've had a
people that do
membership
this, yes.
for a year. I have been once, and so I feel it's a charitable
But
organization.
some people do listen at
That's
the
it.
gym.
They
so if
do
you're
go.
there, we champion you.
Exactly. Bless your hearts. But as we go, one of the things we both love is we love conversation. We love thought. We love sharing things that have affected us and, to be honest, made our lives different. And it's part of what's kind of melded our friendship together.
Yeah.
And so we thought it'd be great to come and begin to share with people some of the things that have made our life different, some of the difference people who have made difference in other people's lives, and some of the places that there's a difference being made in the world through the work and generosity of different people. So,
and what we love about our walks, because you and I have varied interests, the things we love to read and watch and experience in life, the things that I produce. Yes, we produce lots of inspirational programming and have for years, and I love all of that. And I've written Christian books and things, but we also do what the world would call secular documentaries and all, but all of the films that we've done, all of the television shows that I've been a part of producing and directing, there is always an intersection of faith and culture. There's always this intersection of a spirituality and a meaning within whatever we're doing. And in the subject matters that we explore, it's all about being a positive force in a negative world, and that just dovetails nicely with what The Hour has tried to do all of these years.
right. And you and I have always said we love The Hour because it wasn't quote-unquote traditional church. And even though we tried to do worship, we knew people can't always go on Sunday. And so the first difference we tried to make was offering the opportunity to worship and learn about the Word of God through TV. And then COVID came and everybody
became a televangelist overnight.
And then what that did was open the door to what was my real deeper passion. I have an undergraduate degree in social work and corrections, and I've always loved the whole idea of Matthew 25 more than just the regular religion. And one of my core verses has always been Romans 12. And you've heard me share this, but I love Eugene Peterson. And I think this is a great template for what we're going to do. I'm reading Romans 12 from the Message, and I'm begin with verse 1. So here's what I want you to do, God helping you. Take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing you can do for Him. Don't be well adjusted to your culture, so well adjusted that you fit in without even thinking. Instead, fix your attention on God, and you will be changed from inside out. Readily recognize what He wants from you and quickly respond to it. Unlike the culture around you, always dragging you down to its level of immaturity, God brings the best out of you and develops well-formed maturity in you. I love that translation because it's exactly what we want to do. This is, we've been through a season in the church where there's been theological debates, sociological debates. What I want you to do is take your everyday walking around, eating, sleeping, drinking life. And that's what we want to talk about is everyday difference, not a series of what we believe, but really about what I call lifeology, how we live, and what our faith does to make a difference in how we live.
Being different every day.
Yeah.
Being a difference every day. And I love that, the everyday walking around life. And, there was a time in my life when I thought, okay, if you're going to be a Christian, you're going to be a believer, you've got to be a pastor. You've got to choose to be that. And I never felt that kind of call. Although when I was young, some people called me the preacher, but maybe that was because I was always preaching at them. But I never felt that call to be a pastor in life. But we don't just need people who are in the ministry. The body of Christ, there are a lot of appendages. There are a lot of features. Some of us are the hands and feet. Some of us are over here. One time we told this, I was talking to an event. We were talking about John Wesley and getting on his horse and traveling around, and going as a circuit rider from one town to one town. And I was talking about Shane Stanford and you, how I would, help you do your broadcast and do your presentations. And it dawned on me, I'm the horse. I'm getting you to a place where your message can be heard. And I'm like, okay, I'm okay with that. I'm the horse. I'm getting these official pastors and helping get a message of good news and encouragement out there to people in the way that I can help, in the way that I can do that maybe you can't do, or some of these other folks that we've partnered with over the years. It all works together.
Well, I think I beg to differ. We're more like Monty Python and the Coconuts in the Holy Grail. We're both going along making the sounds like we're riding a horse, and right
there you go.
And we're moving, through. You bring a depth of spirituality that has been another thing that's knit our fellowship and our friendship together. Is your life speaks your faith. And that's what we're really trying to say. Whether you're doing watercolors or a documentary or co-writing, it's always an authentic storytelling. And that's another reason that we're such a good fit is we both love good stories.
Oh, you got to tell the story.
And you have this sense of you love the stories. You communicate in stories. It's why you're such a good filmmaker, is that you know how to tell a story. And for me, in my preaching, that's always been the anchor of what I've done is weaving the stories of Jesus, weaving my own stories into a place where people can grab a hold and learn to life. Life is not just a head game. It's about being able to take information and live into it in a way that feels not clunky or awkward, but that just fits in. And that's the ironic thing about being different is what we're becoming different to is what we were really made to be. That's what Jesus talked about. Yeah. Be born again, be recreated, have yourself become different or really become like I made you to be.
Well, and it is a mindset. I mean, being born again, being changed, being uplifted, And how can you lead others if you're not having that change yourself? You can't.
Right.
You have to think differently in order to lead people to be different. And possibility thinking. I think sometimes artists are called dreamers, and but that is what it is, and that's what imagination is. It's
Right.
dreaming what could be. And I happen to believe that so many of our dreams that we have are God inspired, and those are things inside of us where, if gosh, I want to be in front of people, or I want to be a speaker, or I want to that gift is placed within you. That desire, that drive is within you to be different that way, because that's what God has called you to be, and is going to use that for some sort of purpose. And I'm not saying just preaching, but just being an actor, or being whatever, but living your life in a way that is full of the abundance of goodness, the abundance of joy, the abundance of generosity to others, and all of these things is where, by your fruits you shall know them. If you see a generous person living out of that fullness of love in their life, then you can pretty much identify, well, that person has a good foundation, that person knows Christ. That person is a believer. That person has something that I want to have. And how can we get that, or how can we share that? And I think that's the start for so many of us, is seeing what somebody else has and says, how did they have this peace in this time of turmoil and trial? How did they have this beacon guiding them on? What is that? And I want some of that. And I think the ultimate different it was Christ himself. He came along and
Exactly.
upturned every convention, talked to women, dined with prostitutes, all of these things, because he cared for people. And we still wrestle with that. We
Right.
still wrestle with all of these things of who is it okay for us to care about, and who are we supposed to judge or look down on. And we still wrestle with these things. But he was different. And going back to what you were saying, he loved stories. He told fables and parables, not
Parables. That's well. That's good.
he told stories, and that's how he drew. The Bible talks about the children were drawn to Christ, and just gathering around him. There's a certain personality with that. There's a certain love, and we have our red flags and say something doesn't seem right with that person. Well, if people are drawn to you, and there's this energy and enthusiasm and life to something, a lot of times I think it's somebody who is sharing a story, and that story ultimately I think points back to goodness,
Yeah.
and those are the best stories.
They are. And I think, you took me to a place as you were talking. One of the things Jesus did, ironically, his first disciples weren't the Pharisees and the Sadducees. That immediately Jesus sensed that there's a difference between faith and religion.
Yeah.
And that one of the battles he faced was that battle with orthodoxy of those who guarded and tended religion and God. And I think that's another reason we want to do this podcast. A lot, if you ask people about Christianity in this day who are not Christians, there's not a real good opinion of who we are.
Right.
The Christians right now are not liked, and part of the reason is because many of the people who are not liked truly aren't living the different life that Jesus called us to. And
They're just using the phrase Christianity.
they use, I use the word churchianity. There's a
Misusing.
difference
Yeah.
between churchianity and religiosity and faith. And that's one of my deepest passions. I don't just want to tell stories about people who make a difference in the world. I want to talk about how being a Christian is truly different than the world. I mean, Paul's words, in the King James Version, it says, "Be ye not conformed by this world, but be ye transformed by the renewal of your mind." And so we want people to begin to think about, what does it really mean to have abundant life? What does it really mean
Right.
to change in the way Jesus talked about change? And a lot of times that's not lining up in a homogenous group and parroting back a bunch of beliefs. It's truly living into who you were made to be, regardless of whether that looks like anybody else or not. And, I've always said sometimes I think of folks like Lady Gaga may have a closer concept of what it means to be different and her little monsters than some pastors in churches
Right.
and some of our denominations, because we have so sterilized the gospel and humanized it. And that's ironic, because many of the people who look at people who think differently immediately kind of vilify or judge people who think a little different. And so we want to say, we want you to think different.
Well, with churches, with the boxing in sometimes rather than the sending forth, our film we did on the artist Walter Anderson. Okay. Walter, his church where he attended was Horn Island and in nature, and that's where he felt closest to God. And he would say, Providence has provided this for me. I mean, when they found his paintings, the chest of paintings in this secret room after he died, they broke the padlock, go in this room, and they find this chest with 2,000 watercolors neatly stacked inside there. And in that room, they found the 104th Psalm on top of that, and handwritten out by him, and it's as if his offering for the world, and he's including scripture with that. And a lot of people say, oh, well, he's out there, well, he's out on the island on Sunday, and he's not in church. And I think he was closer to God in so many ways than sometimes we try to box God into. You come to this church, and that's where you can find God. Right. And that's why the world, I think, so much has a hard time. Now, there are wonderful examples of things like Samaritan's Purse and things like this, and Christian groups going and helping after hurricanes and all. That's where people really see God. The Methodists were the first on the coast after Katrina and the last to leave. Years and years and a decade later, the last ones to leave from the cleanup down there. That's where people see an intersection between faith and
some
culture.
of the stories that have woven themselves into me when I was at the conference office and came in the first year after Katrina to take over Katrina recovery in our conference.
Yeah.
And for 7 years, watched the best of people in the midst of the worst of times. And it let you know that anybody can make a difference. That there were just so many incredible stories of the people that stepped forward and led. You and I both know Robert Sharp, and Robert leaving his military background, a Green Beret, coming in and spearheading our recovery, and then ending up in Nicaragua and doing some things that were just incredible, not because he felt obligated as somebody, but because he loved the people, because he cared that things would be different. And those are the kind of people we want to talk about. They're not the ones that walk around with a seminary degree. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I have one. But they're the people that walk around with the lifeology degree.
Well, my mama used to say, seminaries weren't many a good pastor. So she said other things as well that I don't think I'll repeat here. But anyway, but Steve, there is a danger because we identify these superheroes who go and do these things and who exhibit the love to others in these magnanimous, huge ways. But sometimes we are in parts of our lives where we're just called to find that still small voice.
Right.
Be still and know that I'm God. Mm-hmm. Just be still and hold on, take a deep breath, relax, and just remember whose you are. It's the Jesus and the women visiting and wait, I've got to clean, I've got to do this, I've got to do this.
Right.
No, I'm going to sit at Jesus' feet and just be with him. And sometimes he wants us to just be with him.
Right.
And that's enough, and that's okay.
And I think that's the other part of the difference that we want to talk about is that change, that transformation is an inside job.
Yeah.
And it's the work of God within us that literally begins to rearrange our life and begins to reconfigure our thinking and our perceptions and our relationships. And that's
Priorities.
exactly, and that's part of the wonder of being in kingdom work is that the change is palpable. One of my latest passions when I was in Hattiesburg was working in recovery. And I love the recovery community
Hmm.
because they have so simplified faith through the 12 steps. And one of my house parents who was at one of the centers I was at said, "Brother Steve, I just want to give you the fundamentals of what we believe. I can't. He can. Think I'll let him." That's life.
Yeah.
And that's that simple truth of most of the time the gospel, the messages are not complex. They're just so simple that they scare the bejeebers out of us. Love God, love your neighbor, love yourself. How hard is that?
That's pretty simple, isn't it?
Yeah, it's simple.
But it's not simple.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we get confused. Something simple is not always something easy. And so a lot of times we kind of hone it and mold it into our own image, our own desires to take the edges off of it, to make it easier for us to live into. And the sad thing about that is it doesn't do its work on you. It's kind of, I did a triathlon.
And what's that?
It's yeah, I've almost forgotten. It was really called the Mighty Might up in Arkansas, and my friend had done multiple ones, and he was telling me how to train, and I was young, and I just said, "I'm not going to train." Well, about 400 yards into the water, I was converted. And by the time we got off the bicycle and by the time we got to the last 7 miles, I was overwhelmed. And so the truth is this lifeology stuff, if I'd have trained, there were simple things I could have done to get ready. But I wanted shortcuts. I wanted ways around. I didn't want to do the different things that would have put my body in a different place.
Right.
And I think sometimes we can talk about this, but it's a discipline. Being different is a discipline. There's an intentionality about it of focusing on seeing what God wants us to do. And that's why we want to do this podcast, is we want you to be different. But just like asking those questions, is my life the way it wants to be? Am I not happy? All those questions are tools of change that when we discipline ourselves to engage them, to ask them,
Yes.
to really dig into them, then change can happen.
And it does take the willingness to really ask those questions, the willingness to introspection, and sometimes that's our hardest thing as parents. Nope, I'm taking care of the kids, I'm taking care of this, I'm taking care of paying the bills so that the kids can do these events, and we lose sight of ourselves sometimes to where are you okay? It's the old adage of you're in the airplane and okay, the oxygen mask fall, make sure yours is securely fastened before you try to help someone else, because it's not going to help anybody if you pass out in the middle of all of this.
The sage that lives in our house, my wife Cindy, always says, "You think you know the whole world and you don't even know your own self."
Wow, Cindy will cut you now, won't she?
She will, but she cuts right to the heart of it
does.
in that sense of, yeah, it's easy to kind of play out there theoretically and do the big things, but it's real easy too to forget
Yeah.
the care that it needs. That's why I love that three-legged commandment that Jesus gave us. Love God, love neighbor, and love self. And it's all integrated. You cannot be a part of that loving transformation without it affecting your relationships with God and others and your relationship with yourself.
And you've been an inspiration to me with our friendship that has just grown closer and closer over these years, because you and I've said this, everybody I talk to about you ever, I've always talked about your genuineness and this underlying Steve says something, you can just count on it, and your sincerity, and you see people just, he's so easy to talk to, he's so it's an empowering thing for others, because if Steve can be genuine, if Steve can be real, down to earth, your book, Down to Earth, being that way doesn't just happen. There's a discipline there. There's a muscle memory there. My fallback is going to be, I'm going to be down to earth, and I'm going to try to, okay, we've got all this happening. We've got all this turmoil. What's the three-legged commandment? Love God, love others, love yourself. And I think if we can always pivot back to that, and if something's out of line in life, well, maybe I'm not loving that person. I have a problem with that. I'll get frustrated and I'll storm through the house and say mean words. And that means I'm not loving others, which means I'm not loving God, and I'm not loving myself. And there's always something out of whack that can point back to those three things.
Exactly. And that's, you know me, when at the end of the ministry, I kind of created my branding of Live Loved. And that's become my kind of stress test of my integrity, is am I living into those three loves? And it used to be when I would close my service, I'd do my secret hand sign of Live Loved and say, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son. So go and live loved.
Yeah.
And I think it's that complexly simple, is, we live into that love and it does its work on us. Well, I think as we close out, we just invite people to begin to ask that question: what needs to be different in your life? What needs to be different in your world? And how can we find our way to that? We look forward to taking that journey together with everybody.
And it's a weekly journey that we're going to take. We're excited about these conversations, and some of the talk we'll talk about is just going to be foolish and fun, and
exactly.
But some of this is going to have some meat to it, and it's going to be things that have helped inspire us, and it really may encourage you as well.
Right. And so we're going to be sharing pieces we've done. Anthony just did a presentation at Belmont about a piece he did about getting out of the boat and courage.
Yeah.
And the book that you're doing right now about, not be unfailing, the idea that no matter how many times we mess up, if we stay engaged with God, God does his work in changing us in that.
And it's not in the book. I love the subtitle. That I didn't come up with this, but it's unfailing. We don't march boldly into God's goodness. It's stumbling our way into God's unlimited goodness. And sometimes all we can do is stumble. But if we're moving forward and we're stumbling towards him, there's going to be a good end to that story.
And I don't think there could be a better end to this podcast than that, because we have stumbled and found our way to the end of it, and we look forward to you joining us in our next podcast.
Come
stumble with us. Is that inspiring or what?
It is inspiring. Thank y'all for joining us.
The Difference Podcast is brought to you by The Hour, time that makes the difference. Over 50 years of broadcast and programming is available online at OurStream, our streaming platform located at thehour.org. This podcast was recorded in the studios of the Institute for Southern Storytelling at Mississippi College. The Institute is committed to telling positive, uplifting stories through the creative means of television, writing, artwork, music, and film. Find out more about the Institute for Southern Storytelling at southernstorytelling.mc.edu. I'm Anthony Thaxton. Thank you for joining us on the Difference Podcast.